see it in Tennessee.
Oh, okay. I'm sure we see it in Boston too. Am I audible okay? Sometimes the teams have problems, so I want to make sure. All right, good. Thanks, Bill. Thanks for having me. Thanks for the people who come in tonight to listen to this topic. I will make sure your time's worth spent. And thanks, Andrew, for joining from UK. I will make sure that you have valuable information A to Z of ARM template 0 to 100. I gone through it. I worked a lot, a month ago for some projects. Then I thought that put through as a speak is a great idea. All right. About me a little bit. I think Bill already said, enough about me. I work for a company called Akumina as a CTO. I've been in this field, the cloud expert area in the Azure, AWS, and Google for a long time. I also run the user group, New Hampshire Cloud, and here is my personal website. So I have next topic aligned here as a front door service. And it's also a great topic. It's again a practical experience. We've gone through a large scale software as a service implementation across multiple regions. We have lots of practical hands-on experience. I put through a talk which is coming on next week. Visit, and I would like to have you all here too sometime next week. The talk that today I'm talking is already did in my own user group. I'm going to chat this URL. All the presentation samples tech, you can find it from, where is the chat window? From here. And I'll also have another send that details to Bill and Jason. All right, with that, let me begin the topic. So today we're going to talk about the ARM template. As I said, it's A to Z, 0 to 100. Any technique they applied, the technology solutions they provide to the market, we're going to discover from 0 to 100. So we're going to dive into what is infrastructure as a code. Sometimes it's also called a platform as a code if you don't use infrastructure, because we have a confused definition IAS. And ARM template structures and how to create a basic linked nested templates, how we can execute from them a PowerShell or any CLI. Some people love to execute from the CI/CD by using the service principle, because a lot of big enterprise, big companies, they don't allow developers to easily access into their Azure cloud. So they delegate the service principles to execute. Those people, they prefer to go through a CI/CDs. CI/CD also can apply to Git Action, how we can execute those templates using the Git Actions. Then we will talk, how we can build a UI around it. Why do we need a UI? How we can use a service catalog, which is kind of marketplace for the corporate. Service catalog is nothing but a private marketplace for a corporate, and how you can take that same exact thing that you build for the corporate, put them in the public marketplace where you can marketize it and you can incentivize to get a more money, how you can do all those steps. I'll bring all those things. Just take a one template in many variable form of using it and marketing it. Microsoft also has a concept called template spec, Azure's blueprints. They both slightly differ, but they complement each other. We will dive into it. What is a template spec? What is a blueprints? And they have a way to execute the script. Some enterprise, you will have to execute a lot of PowerShell or CLI script, so you can do 0 to 100 in your applications without manually manipulating any steps. So these are the entire areas, in my opinion, that ARM does, right? So we'll dive into it, everything. I have a simple demo, and I have some materials that you can deep dive into. We'll see as we progress. So infrastructure as a code, it's a very simple form. You should be able to repeat that. If you take any enterprise, small companies, they're not worrying about it. They go create it. But if you take enterprise, they need everything to be repeatable manner. If you do more than once, I worked with a lot of enterprises, but if they do more than once, they definitely need a repeatable way to do that. So that's why the infrastructure as a code in the form of JSON. You take a JSON template, either use a PowerShell or a CLI tools or REST API, or use any programming language that's going to call, again, a REST API. They all need the payload in the form of JSON. So it's nothing but, that's why we call this ARM template is your infrastructure as a code. So it's composed with the 3 units. One is the code. Other one is the template and configuration, what you want to do. And then the policies, so what type of policy? It can be a compliance, security, or symbol naming conventions that you want to apply it. And you put them on a source control in a typical way you want to repeat in your day-to-day life. And then you use some orchestrator. This orchestrator can be a simple PowerShell or the CI/CD, or whatever you call it as, or a template spec or the blueprint or the service. You make that as an orchestrator, and then you deploy the infrastructure for your required application. This can be a simple web app, just a web app and storage, to enterprise multi-node scaled across the world. It can be anything, but those can be composed in simple form of ARM template. That's how we're going to talk today. So here are some tools. Azure Resource Manager is what we're going to talk today. And there are additional tools, Terraform, AWS Cloud Formation, Ansible, Docker. Docker might not be the IAC, but if you look at it, take the concept, what runs on my machine, I want to run it on the other machines. So Docker is the best example, but I'm not sure that giving us an example, I'm not sure how it's infrastructure as a service. Google Cloud Deployment Manager for the Google Cloud, Chef and Puppet, if you want to run it, some change state configurations, you can use those tools. So to begin the ARM template, here is the basic structures. You need a schema, valid schema. So once you create a new ARM template, that's the schema is going to be coming. And you need a version that's never changed for a long time, 1000. And then it has the another 5 types: parameters, functions, variables, resources, and outputs. The parameter just like how you write any programming language functions or routines, you just take a parameter, same exact format. It comes with the default parameter, or you pass in the parameters. Functions, when you say functions here, it's not like how we write a compiled routines, like functions, you do 1,000 things. But here the functions are simple manipulation purpose. You can't even query certain things. I will give you things where the functions won't work correctly. But if you use some string functions, you can use that. The parameter can be any primitive type, like a string, integer, datetime, or a composite type like array and object. You can define a variables. If in your ARM template, you're repeatedly using certain things, you can define a variables and then have them stored in the variable, refer them. Resources is where you're going to define what resource you're going to provision part of your templates. It can be anywhere from a simple resource storage account to anything that Azure provides that hundreds of resources. You can go through it, you define all the resources. Some resources can have inside the resources. For example, key vault is a resource, is a main resource, but creating the secret, creating the key, creating the certificates, they are sub-resource. So a resource can be a resource. But once you have the proper tool, you will never miss a syntax. They give a lot of shortcuts as you type in. It emits all the syntax and required parameters, easy to complete. And then the outputs, if you for example, you create a storage account, you want to get the output string, so you don't have to log into the portal, right? For example, in an enterprise, they don't allow developers to get directly into the Azure portal, but they can create their own account, but they want to see the storage connection string so that they can connect to it, provided they are not putting them in a key vault, some reasons. Or in this case, if they put them in a key vault, they want to displace the key vault to URI, so they can use it in their application. So that's output. Those kind of things that you can output. But anything you can output, but mainly it makes sense to output those kind of parameters. Here is a little difference how the basic linked and nested template works. Before I get into, let me open a simple demo. Going to go back. As I said, I have all the demo that I'm going to use. All the code is over here. I'm going to use all the files from here. I already downloaded it. Let me open it. So far, we good? Okay. So let's open this one over here. Here's a template. So if you have the tool, I'm using the VS Code. It's a pretty sleek tool. If you look at the add-ins, Azure Resource Manager. right? So Microsoft. So once you install this tool, it gives you all the syntax that you want. You don't need to remember any of those syntax. So once you are in the thing, you just keep typing. For example, you want to type a resource, just type we'll bring it in. For that, close that one. So you select, for example, I want to app inside a type, then it leaves all the syntax that you want. And then you go ahead and then modify the value that you want to modify. Okay, I'm going to undo that. And similarly, for parameters, everything they have the shortcut defined. So you say like a parameter name, it gives you all those syntax. So you don't need to remember anything. Just have that add-in installed, good to go. And similarly, that gives for variables, functions, and all those things. So here is the simple ARM template. All I'm doing here is I'm creating a simple storage account, right? So it has the parameters. Parameter need a locations. The best practice for locations, if you don't pass it in, the default value must be this. I'm saying must because as we go through, we're going to show some demo how you can submit for marketplace and all those things. Those validations need these to be a default value. So they have some enforced best practices. So that's why I'm saying that default value should be location. If you want to keep a default value empty, then don't use this default value. This will fail. So to summarize the syntax, here's the parameters. You can add as many parameters you want. It supports any primitive types, array or object. A primitive type includes the string, integer, datetime, and so on. The resources, and then now you define the resources. The resources come as a type. You need to know the type, and then you need to know the API versions, right? So how do you know that what type has the what API version? So one way, you can Google around. The other way, if you go back to portal.azure.com, Resource Explorer, and then you go to the providers. I'll go. Everybody knows storage account. I'm sure everybody knows storage accounts. It's okay, storage accounts. See, so this has the type like delete account. So in this case, in our samples, we have the storage account. So if we go back and look at it, right? So it says the supported locations. So these are the locations, supported API versions. What's the default version they're setting it? So you can look at it. So before you compose a resource, you can come back and refer it over here. So you can use any resource that defined over here as part of the provider can be used within the ARM templates, right? And so on, you define, whatever the encryption mode. If you don't know the syntax, just type the ARM storage, it's going to emit that, and then you provide the values. And then the output. Once this is created, it's going to execute the output syntax, and then there is some way to read it. List keys is API, and for the resource ID, and then get this. And these things we can pretty easily Google around. If you don't find in the Microsoft site, you can find out all those things. How to get this output of any connection string of Redis or storage, and I will show you a lot of services creating together. But any service you create, you need a certain things to be output. You can pretty much read anything, but some are single line read like this, some are multi-line read. So you have to make multiple calls. Right. So let's get back to a slide. That's a simple syntax. This is, I call it as a simple form, like a basic form, no nested, nothing. So let's go back to look at the other types. So if you look at, that's a basic type, right? So you have a simple file, ARM template, no parameter file, nothing. So in the same file, you had a parameter, you had a variable. If you have a function, you can define it, and then the resources, and then the output. But now how it works with the linked and nested templates. So here is the basic templates. It has everything inside. But if you look at on the right-hand side, which is the linked template, right? So what I'm doing is I'm copying this content of the resource and move to a new file called storage.json. And then I'm referring it. So my URI, so in the template link, I'm providing the URI. This URI is going to be wherever the template is running as a root path plus artifacts storage.json, because when I store it, I create a folder called artifacts, and then underneath I create a file called storage.json. So that's how I'm structured my file. So I'm giving it that way. Here is the main template URL. It's going to return the main template URL minus the file name, and then add these paths, and it's going to get that one. And now you need to pass in the parameters. So if you have a simple requirement, basic template is the way to go, right? So you have 1 or 2 resources, okay, that makes sense. But if you have more than 1 resource, the basic templates will be pretty confusing. I know we have the editors; it can help you to format and read and traverse pretty efficiently, but still it will be confusing to maintain it. It makes sense to create a multiple templates, right? So you create a storage, for example, you create Azure Search, then you search.json or Redis Cache or Cosmos DB, whatever you call it as, and you have it separate templates. And from the main template, which is the orchestrator of the template, and you pass in the parameters. So you collect all the parameters from the main template, and you pass in those parameters to the referenced templates. They're called linked templates. The nested templates, again, your nested template, linked templates can link to another templates. For example, you have, provision the websites, right? The websites might include, several components like a website, storage, app insight, and then you may have another nested template, to do a diagnostic settings or log analytics or whatever you want to configure it, but you can refer them. So again, the nested template refers to another template, and the linked template refers to another template that will become a nested template. So these 2 levels is more than enough. So it's a basic template, it's a high level or a high level template, and if you need a more, and then you can put them in a separate file, refer them as the linked templates, and then you pass in the parameters. And then you can read the outputs by using the template name. So in this case, the name is equal to storage. So instead of reading the variable of X, you will be saying the storage of X. We will see it in the demo. All right. So here is the syntax, how you can execute using the PowerShell. Similar syntax applied to CLI if you use it. For this talk, I'm going to use the PowerShell. You connect it, and then if you have multiple subscription, you have to set the context. In my case, I have like hundreds of subscription. It will randomly switch to one of the subscriptions, so I have to be very careful and select one for the demo purpose. Here is the command that you're going to use: new Azure Resource Group deployment, and then you provide the name and deployment name, resource group name, and then the template file, right? And then the parameters. So if you have a template uses a 3 parameter, you can say parameter name, whatever the name, in this case, storage account, or the location, or the X or Y, whatever the parameter, and then the value, right? So and so on. That's one way of executing it. The other way of executing the template is to define the template file and then define the parameter file as a separate parameter file. So somebody dynamically manipulate the parameters, and then they can feed in that as a parameter file. So they will never change the template file, but they will change the parameter file. For example, your dev infrastructure versus the stage versus the production. So they're going to change the parameter file for the dev, for the stage, and then the prod, but the template itself is not changed. In that case, you can use the parameter file. But again, we can override those parameters by using the parameter name if you want to. This is the file. This helps you if you run it in a local and you have the C drive reference kind of things. And this is the URL. If you run it from the cloud, it's always a relative path. So you have the nested file structure, then you store them in a blob storage or the Git or wherever your destination is, where you can reach it to a publicly. If you put them in a private URL, you will have to give them a SAS token, shared access signature token URL, then they can download and do it. But the path has to be relative to your main template. Then only it can traverse properly, right? And then the template parameter UI, wherever the parameter UI is. So one thing to identify or note, if you put them in a Git, make sure your template is following a UTF-8 format. By default, the Git uses the UTF-16 format. I was waiting a couple of hours to identify a problem. If you put them in anywhere else, UTF-16 format is okay, but the UTF-8 is everywhere supported. But by default, the Git assumes the UTF-16. So you make sure you save your template as a UTF-8. If you store UTF-16 as a Git, when you read it, it will not read correctly. You will get an error. Just things to note that I gone through. I wasted a few hours. All right, let's see some demo here. So I have some PowerShell, again, the same location, you can see it. I'm going to run, I already logged in, I guess. So I'm going to run these two commands to make sure I'm in the right context here. Right. I don't need to create any resource group. I already created one empty resource. Refresh. So I have it. I'm going to run this one. So I take this file path. I'm going to give that Azure deploy all in one. Right. So that takes a parameter storage account. Right. And then I'm going to say I keep it unique so we don't need to face this problem fixing it. Udai Boston 01. Then I don't need a second parameter, and all the other parameters are defaulted. So if I look at the template over here, I'm looking for 3 parameters. Resource group, I set use the resource location. Storage account, this is the wrong practice. You should not add, if it's empty value, you should not leave that. That's a wrong practice. This should look like this. Here it's the right practice because you providing the default value. Okay, I don't need to worry about it because it's a very simple demo, so I don't need to worry a lot of things. So I'm putting hard coding the default value, and here I don't have any default value. I need to pass it in, but here I have a default value. So I'm going to save this one. I'm running from the local. I copy this syntax. I'm running from the same path, so I don't need to worry about it. I just that it knows the path reference. If I am in a subfolder, then I need to provide the proper pathing reference. Okay, it shouldn't take a long time. Let me see what I have in the next. All right, so it should be done by now. If I look at it over here, so one is deploying. I have no idea why storage account takes this long. Okay, it is succeeded. So you can look at it. So if you look at the, so anytime you deploy it, it will tell you what is going on over here. You click on it, and you will have that deployment name that you chose, and you can look at the input parameters, what you passed in, and then the output parameters, what is coming in. The best practice not to emit like this as output parameter in your script. And if you some reason you want to package that as a marketplace, they will not approve it. You will never be able to emit a sensitive information like this. The closest you can emit is a key vault URL, some sort of like a client IDs or secrets. That's the closest they will let you do it. You can emit a Redis connection string. You can emit a Cosmos DB connection string. You can emit a SQL connection string. Any connection string is not allowed to emit as output parameter. That's a security violation. Even though you're going to run within your account, and whoever has the access, they are the one going to see it. Even though you can reset that connection string, but still they don't approve that action. So they will reject it until you remove that type of output variables. Things to note here. All right. So we got it. We executed simple templates. Let's move through it, and then I'll come back to more topics over here. Okay, that's a one way. You have PowerShell or CLI. You can run it, and then the other way that you can run is the CI/CD pipelines, right? So if you want to use the CI/CD pipelines, I'm going to go back to my other machine, bring some URL. Any questions so far? Okay, use this repo. Everybody's there?
Yes, Udai.
Okay.
I just want to add one more point. In the PowerShell script, we have one important feature called depends on. It's then one of the property in that
yes,
ARM template.
Yes, yeah. It is the I stacked on the other demos. I'll come back to that.
Sure. Thank you.
Yeah. So I'm not. I didn't dive into all the concept. As I progress, I will come into that. Thank you for that. Now let's go and how we can use the same thing on the DevOps, right? So I go back and then bring this window. All right. So how do I execute that in the CI/CD pipelines? There are multiple ways. Some enterprise might prefer to certify that CI/CD pipeline, meaning that instead of running, giving you as a single file reference and you calling it, passing in as a parameters, some enterprise will certify that as an add-in, and then they can go drag and drop. So if you, let me tell you what I mean. So if you go back, you click a releases, right, and then you create a new release, release pipeline, right? So. And then I'm just going to an empty job. I have nothing else to add. So I click some job over here. Azure template, add. So you see that, right? So when you click add, it see that you can certify your template as add-ins, then it will appear over here. For example, a user group, storage creation, user group, web app, user group, Redis cache. So you can, once you certify that, it will appear over here. Some customers prefer that way. Some enterprises, large enterprises, they want to well control it, who using that. Then you need to certify those JSON templates. Once you certify it, they can drag and drop, just like how we did for Azure templates over here. Okay, so now I have it. Resource group, you need to have a managed connections. In this case, I have some pre-populated connections. If you want to create a new connection, you click on the manage, to let you log in and then complete that login process. All it does is it creates the service principal, so you can securely communicate within your credentials. And then subscriptions, it's attached to it, whatever the name you give it. Create or update resource group, you can do that. If not, it will create. Otherwise, it's always update on the action. Whatever the name you want to choose. In this case, you're going to use the one that we chose, Udai, and then the location. It brings a drop down by default. Again, if you have a certified product, you can bring anything. So you can compose all these units as a certified unit. You can call it as a name you want. It appears in this portal. Favorite of yours used to do. In this case, linked artifact or the URL of the file. Linked artifact is the one you do it part of your DevOps process. You do a build process. It drops the build. You take that file location and you have the template part of the file locations structure, and then you reference them. Then you use a linked artifact. I don't have the build set up, so I'm going to use the URL of the file. So before I do URL of the file, I'm going to upload a few things here. So let me go back to this one. Here is a storage that we created. Overview. I'm going to upload few files here. Okay, create a container called the demo. Right. I'm going to upload a few files here. See demo. So I'm going to upload right now these three. I'll tell you what I'm going to do with that. Let me upload let's upload those three now. Upload. Right. So we also upload. I would have done that before as well. Artifacts. Going to go to a folder called artifact. All right, great. So now I'm going to choose these Azure deploy.json, for example, over here. Let me go back to my pipeline. Just take the link. Close. Copy link. Create. Copy it. Put it over here. And then go back to the same portal. Parameters file. URL. close, create shared access signature, create, copy, put it over here. Right. So what I have here is the two files, Azure deploy and Azure deploy parameters.json. So if I look at those two files, so this is all in one, right? I had everything. And now I'm going to split it slightly different. So I have Azure deploy.json, which have some parameter I defined over here. And then I have the storage account, storage account SKU, but I have more parameters over here, but I split it. I split as Azure deploy and Azure deploy parameter.jsons. But if I look at the resources here, I have multiple resources. I have a type, I have an API version, and then I use a linked template. In that linked template, I see artifact is going to be storage.json. So when you run that, you use that one. And I'm passing in the parameters that's required for it. And then the, I have another resource, which is app insight, right? And then I have another resource called the deployments, which is using the web app.json. So I'm now creating the web apps. But in that, I have something called depends on. I don't want to create a web app until my storage and app insight is created. The reason may be, I may be adding some enabling the app insight. So I want to enable the app insight part of the web app. But app insight needs to be created before that. That's why I use the depends on syntax. So if you have multiple templates, in this case, if you look at it artifact, so we have the artifact of app insight, Key Vault, storage, and web apps in this demo. So we create the storage, we create the app insight, and then storage and app insight. Now we create the web app by calling the web app.json, but we say that wait until these two templates are created. That's a depends on, right? Once it's depends on, once those created, then it's going to execute this template, and then you pass in the parameters. In this parameter, if you look at it, we use the reference variable. So reference of app insight. App insight is this template, which is the reference name coming from here, whatever the name you referenced over here. So use that name, reference the app insight, and then tell me the output of web app instrumentation key dot value. So if you go back to the app insight.json, I have the output variable called web app instrumentation key web app insight connection string. But that connection string again formatted the value like this, right? So you go through a component called insight/components, and then apply the name, that's a service, and then look for the variable of API version, then read the instrumentation key. So that's how you read the instrumentation key. And this is how you read the connection string, right? So that is referenced over here. So if you look back this template, so we say that, okay, reference the app insight, wherever that reference is, it's going to go back to here. Okay, here is my app insight. So that executed, that's ready because it marked as depend on. That's ready. Go back there and then read those outputs, and then output of that key and then the corresponding value, that JSON properties, right? So if you look back the app insight.json, that's all it did. So it come back, it passed in those parameters, it's created it. Okay, it outputted that value, and then it's going to read it. And if you continue, now we create the key vault as a last one. Now you configured the app storage, app insight, web app, because web app need app insight in order to enable that, application insight nature. Now we create in the key vault. When you create a key vault, you wait for all those three components to be created. So it's going to execute it as a last. Then it's going to take some object ID. Now the reason that this demo, what it's doing is, we are enabling the identity of the web app, and then we are adding that identity into a key vault access, so that you can set this key vault to web apps when they are working it. So you hide your connection string into a key vault, but now you need to give a web app access to a key vault. So that's the line it does, right? So it goes and takes that key vault object ID, and then it sets the connection string, and then sets a value of the web app object ID into object ID granted permissions, and it takes the whatever the permissions that needed. We will look at it in the key vault. So before I get into key vault, let's go to the web app. So in the web app, we have some parameters: location, web name, web SKU. But here I'm not saying anything because this is not the master template. My master template is Azure deploy.json. From there, these are called as in linked templates, right? So I'm also talking about the package URI. I want to give I want to deploy my web app packages over there, part of this deployment. And then I have the resources. I go through it. I create the web server forms. I set all these things, application insight. That's why we want to create the insight first before we create the web app. And then here I want to create, if the package URL is created, so you can also execute that resource as part of the conditions, right? If this condition met, then you create this resource. Whatever the action is given, perform it. Otherwise, just skip it. In this case, if the package URI is a valid URI, then you go ahead and deploy it. This is called the MS deploy as an extension model. Then it deploys it. It's equal to a zip deploy that we do in the Azure web app. Right, and then it takes the package URL and it downloads the package and then complete the zip deploy. At the end, you got everything that you need. Okay. Then we are outputting a variable called output. In that output, we enable the identity.principal ID. So we enable the identity, and I don't have to tip into how to create a web app. This is the ARM template session, but you got the concept. We enable the system identity. Because of that, it will enable identity, and then we'll have all these values set. Okay, principal ID. So that it returns the two names, website host name, just like how you get it from the Azure web portal, and then the object ID, which is the identity of the ID. Now, when we get back to the key vault, right? We have the variables. We do that. We go through it. We define the permissions here. So we want to set a key permission to be get and list, secret permission to be get and list, nothing more than that. So once the web app is created, identity turned on, for that identity, enable access of key permissions and the secret permissions for get and list. That's all we're trying to do over here. We go through it, and then it emits that key vault URL. This is okay to display the portal, because if somebody knows this URL, they're really not going to get it until somebody grants them the access of their identity, which nobody does that anyway. But in this case, web app only knows, they uses the service principal localhost mechanism to connect to a key vault on runtime start event, and then they take the value, put them in the environment variable. But that's okay. It's safe to share this value. You can't do anything. We can talk about it. You got the value, but nothing you can do with it. And somebody go ahead and create a new version of it. Anyway, so that's how it works. So, from the main template, we called everything, it created, and then it outputs that value. Okay, let me go back to the main template. Secret value, it refers the templates and completes that. And finally, it outputs this value. I'm going to hold this demo for later, but let me run a simple demo for CI/CD. So I'm going to go back to my storage account. Let me pull this value alone. Get stored access signature, create, copy. All right, so I'm going to empty this value. I'm going to put it over here. You can run the same way, but I'm holding that purposefully for another demo. So I can save some time. I see it's already 7 o'clock. Now override parameters value. So if you look at the command line, now how we pass in the parameter, we override the parameter by two mode, right? One, you can pass in the template file, or you can override by the name. So in this case, we set this right. So you can do the same exact things over here. So I'm going to copy that value. I go back to my CI/CD, right? And then I can put it over here. So that's how you override the value. Either you can do it that way, or you can use a little override parameter builder. So it loads this window as soon as it loads. What is going on? Okay, it's sometimes crazy. Click on it. It says storage account student, whatever the value. So I'm going to change to 2 for now. And then if you want to add a more parameter, keep adding it. Okay, got it. I'll change it over here too. Now, deployment mode is going to be incremental or complete or validation only. Validation that validates and give you the whatever the outcome, for example, the service name available or not, and so on. And complete, it's going to try to start over. If there is a service that exists, it may throw the error. Incremental, if the service already deployed part of the previous deployment, it's going to skip it and move on to the next step in the deployments. Whenever the conflict happen on the name existing be created by this particular deployment, it's going to skip it and move on. You do have to give us some deployment name, so I'm going to say CI/CD step 1. Deployment outputs, you can read those variables as a, from the PowerShell, and if you want to output anything, and then control parameters, control options, output variables, and then click save. I'm going to delete it, so it doesn't matter where I'm putting it in. So I saved it. Now I'm going to say create release. It's a simple demo, so I don't need to worry about it. I say release 1, it's running, it's queued. We look at the logs. It should be done fast enough, but you get the concept. So that's why we run from the CI/CD. We will come back. We don't need to wait. We have a lot to see in this talk. Right. So what we discussed so far, we talked about the basic template. We talked about the nested template. We've gone through how you can nest and depends on how you can read the outputs, how you can pass the parameter from one template to other template, how you can call from the local file, how you can call from the CI/CD, and so on. Right. Now let's move on to the next one, Git Action. Okay, so now we execute a CI/CD on the DevOps. You can perform the same exact things on the Git Actions. Again, and every tech I gone through, I provide you a link where you can get exact details of what I'm talking about over here. Okay, so in this case, you go here, you find all the commands. You go here, you find all the commands. In this case, Git Action. So you go here, you look at it. This is all the details that you want to. The Git action, there is you will have to create a service principal again. It has some, not a simple client ID and client secret. Also needs the tenant ID, subscription ID, because it is running outside of your logged in infrastructure. So it's not using your logged in account. So you need to plan for that service account. There is a command, you can run the service account. It's going to emit the output like this. Once the output is created, then you create a name. I mean, they're predefined as Azure credentials, Azure Resource Group, Azure Subscriptions, but you can pretty much use any name you want to. And you need to store them into a Git portal and then use it. Let me quickly walk you through. Dev.com. Okay, so once you're logged in, you need to log in for this one, and then go to settings, store the sensitive informations. You go back to the secrets, right? I already created something, so I mean, if you click on, if you want to update, it's not going to display. The stored credentials will never display in a Git portal, which is a good thing. If you have a new one, you can update it, but you will never be able to see what is stored. A resource group, and then the Azure subscriptions, right? We can create a new one, but let's not create a new one. Let's go ahead and use that one directly here. So I stored these 3 values already, and then all you have to do, go to actions, and then you create a new workflow. And then when the new workflow comes in, so all the steps are explained over here. How you can do this is again in a DevOps YAML file, right? You use the same exact YAML file over here. I get a new one, so I click on over here, and then and then run it. So I go back to my files. Give me 1 second here. Tech talk and workflow. So I go back over here. Here's my YAML file, but if I go and then edit it, it gives you this option to commit. As I commit, it's going to launch this command and run it. So I'm going to say something like scroll bar. Scroll bar. I'm going to call this as a demo 05. It's going to get in a different resource group because the credential created against a different resource group. So it's going to create a different resource group. And then all I'm asking is create a storage account called st Udai demo 05, and then use that all in one JSON template created, right? And I click on the commit. I don't need to put anything. It's just a demo. I committed it. Don't worry about that walking through. Now, if I go back to my actions, it's working on it. So, it's queued. Once it's done, it's going to create a new storage account. Okay, so let's go back to the portal where we were. right? Home, resource group. So this one is to be, and the second one we create a part of the CI/CD, and then this one it will create when it come back. I believe demo 04 or 05 we call it as, it will come back. When once it's done, it will create whatever the value you put them in. It's again a YAML file. You just are triggering it on change. So the pipeline triggers in, executes that command. So that's the Git Actions. All right, let's get back. So now we know how to execute CI/CD DevOps, CI/CD Git Actions. Now let's get a little bit more details into how you can for this demo, I'm going to use those nested templates. So how you can create a UIs to collect a set of parameters, right? And then how you can host it as an internal marketplace. So in order to do that, we have to have some UI definition markup standard followed. So if you go back to over here, we had a all-in-one template. Then we had a deploy as the parameters. You don't need to have another parameter file, but it's a nice. That's the recommended way, parameter files. Now, the new thing now we're talking is the create UI definitions. You only need to create a UI definitions if you are going to have an internal marketplace or you are going to have a public marketplace. In both cases, you need to have the create UI definitions. If you have no intention to use the internal marketplace or a public marketplace, you don't need to create this file at all. Okay. And once you have a create UI definition, that also follows the different syntax. Instead of as you deploy, the name must be main template.json. I mean, this is nothing but a copy of the as you deploy. There's nothing newer than copy of the as you deploy, but the name has to be a main template. That's the naming they're looking for. When you apply for a certification, they look for do you have the file called main template? Yes. Do you have the file called create UI definition? Yes. Then they will go for another validations. So before we dive into all those things, let's see how we can create a UI definitions. Let's go back to the slide, and then the UI definition, you can always go here and look at it, how the UI definition works. So I'm going to open a new tab and then click on the create UI definitions. It gives me markup, right? So here is the inbuilt controls that you can look at it. For example, you want to build a storage account selector. You just have to drag this one over there. And as you walk through the UI, it will draw the storage account selector. So if you need to know what JSON format it look like, just to open it up, it tells you just drop these snippets on your UI wizard or UI JSON file, and it's going to drop this UI for you to select it, right? So that's how it works. So in our demo here, I have a very simple case. Control A, I select it. I go back to my UI designer. I say Control A, delete everything, and then paste it, and then I can preview. The cool things about it, you can preview how it's going to look on the web portal, either in a private or public marketplace, right? Oh, okay. So I have the resource group, I have the region, I have the web app name, I have the web app SKU, I have the package URL, and I have all these parameters I defined. Okay, I go create next. Okay, I got my validation failed, and then I look for view payload outputs. I'm not going to get it because it's a validation failed, right? So I have to go back and then fix this value. In this case, I'm not going to give anything for demo reason. So there is no validation over there, but in a real package, we need a validation. So I will keep it empty. Just put some random values. Okay, now I review it. Okay, the validation passed. Now you want to know how these values are collected and passed back to a main template, right? That's the view payload. Now it will tell you, okay, so these are all the parameters I'm going to pass into your main template. So now with that, let's go and look at it. So create UI definitions. The default one is the basics. So if you go to a marketplace here, portal.azure.com, you create a resource. You can create anything you want. Say for example, Windows 2016 server, right? So this has the basics. That's exactly the basics. This, okay. You can compose anything that want to be in the basic blade. And then if you look at it, it has the disk. This is another tab. Networking is another tab. Management is another tab, right? That's you compose it over here. So basic blade, I have the web name, web SKU. So here is some allowed values, right? So I predefined some allowed values. Microsoft has two statements. One, you cannot predefine this kind of this kind of things on the computers. For example, virtual machines, they won't let you predefine it because they have a control to call in a virtual template. So if you go back to my previous. Okay, let's go back to this one. So you got it. I'm going to cancel it. Again, you cannot deploy it from this visa. It just validates your markup. It's a valid how it's going to look up. You have a crazy regular expression. So maybe having one or two regular expression here. See, I'm having some regular expression over here. I have the storage account, and then the storage account. Now I call it as a text box here. I will show you another place where I call the control text box here. So it's not going to draw their control. It's going to give me a simple text box. And then I say the validation, it should be a lowercase, 60 characters, right? And so on. In here, they have the VM compute. If you look at it, credential compo, virtual network compo. So they have the VM size selector. That's the VM size selector. If you try to hardcode, I want to support, for example, F1, F2, F3, T1, T2, T3, they will never approve you. They will reject you. Whenever these components are available, you are forced to use those components, mainly on the size part of it, some SKU. Anywhere that you see the SKU, you will have to use the predefined components. If they don't have a SKU defined components, then you are okay to write either dropdown or text box paste. Okay. So again, you can only validate the template over here. You will never able to run this. You're never able to run this. You just validate your validation is correct. Say, for example, storage account, we have the, something like that, right? So if you go back, it's going to tell you it's been a 3260 layer. So you provide the regular expression. You provide what the error message. That's the error message is going to tell you. It enumerates and tells you over there. Okay. That's okay. Now I have the UI definition. What I can do with that. So this is called internal marketplace, service catalog managed applications. I mean, when I say external, it's internal, like in your corporations. Create a UI definition and then the main template.json. Create a zip file with the UI definition and the main template and any nested template. So these are the two files mainly required. You can put all the resource inside the main template, or from the main template, you can call the artifacts if you want to slice it down for the easy maintenance. Create a zip file and put them over there, and then create a service catalog. You go to the portal, look for the service catalog, create a new catalog, and then deploy your zip file into the service catalog, and boom, it's going to appear in your catalog, and then you deploy from the catalog. Okay, so the way that it works, publisher creates. So again, one or more JSON files, publisher creates it. He deploys the service catalog, right? And the internal user comes in, he deploys it, and he uses that service catalog, he deploys it. So these are the 4 parts that covered part of the service catalog. Now you want to take these as everything works nice, or you feel like some point you want to go to a public marketplace. There is a thousands of offer available in the marketplace. You want to be one of them. It's not going to cost you anything. You just need to set up the account, right? You put them over there. You just take the same exact zip file that you put it over here, and now put them in offer, public marketplace offer, and they will go through the process and approve it. Once it approved, user can use it. External users can use it. Oh, okay. Here I defined the internal service catalog, external marketplace. So that's why I confused. With service catalog for internal, it's corporate only. Or enterprise or the company who owns the subscription. External marketplace. Once you put them on a marketplace, there is no way you can hide it. However, you can create a multiple offers. Those offers can be hidden, and then you can create a public offer that can leverage the hidden offers. I'll walk you through some demos down the road. So that's the service catalog. Service catalog, nothing but internal of marketplace. And a publisher creates a JSON template, publish into the service catalog. The user comes in, he deploys it. And later stage, you decided you want to go public. then you can put them in a marketplace as an offer and it publish it. Anybody can see it. Here is a sweet link that you can go through. Now let's run this demo. I can reuse the same demo for the other steps. So to do that, we defined it clearly over here. We're going to create a UI definition and main template, and then the artifacts that we want to use within that main template. So I go back to my folder here. I bring it back this folder. So I enumerate to thing over here. I have main template. I have the create UI definition. I'm going to include the artifacts. That's all I'm going to do. I want to make sure I didn't edit anything over here, and it'll break. Hopefully I didn't edit it. What is the one I edited? Deploy is fine. We don't care about it. Okay. All right. So that's why I did not run that part of the CI/CD pipeline. So as the definition, we need a create UI definition. We need a main template. We need artifacts, right? So I'm going to create as a zip file, right? Artifact.zip. You can name it whatever you want. I'm going to go back to my storage that I created, part of this very first demo. I go back to Udai Boston. I'm going to go back to one of this account, Storage Explorer, and then demo. I'm going to upload this file. On template, name doesn't matter, but in real world, you will name it whatever your product you call it as. So I'm going to upload it. Okay, I got the artifact.zip. So what the zip contains here, this has the create UI, main template, and then the artifact. The artifact is we're going to create app insert keyword storage and the web app.json, right? All right, now let's go back and then create the Sas URL for this one. I create because it's a private container. So, if you want to put it in a public, you do it. But most people who handles this stuff, they most likely put them in a private URL because they want to protect the intellectual property. So, what they do is, when it goes to the public marketplace, they prompt, okay, enter some site, package URL, right? Then they have to talk to you. So that's how you hide your intellectual property. Somebody paying for it before they're buying it. But you can give the entire JSON template, but this is we're assuming that the component that you use to inside is your intellectual property. You can hide it by forcing them to input these parameters. But in this case, we're just giving the package URL. So I'm going to copy that one. I go back to the Azure portal. I'm looking for service catalog. Any question? I know I'm maybe going too fast. I think I want to make sure we cover a lot of stuff. Yeah, so far so good.
So then, please continue.
Okay, great. All right, so I'm going to add a Boston demo 1. Doesn't matter name, but you will be giving a proper name in your stuff. I pick a subscription. Okay. I pick a resource group. In this case, I'm going to use the one that I already used, so I can delete it of this demo. The package URI. So here is the package URI, which is the package of the marketplace that we composed those ARM template. Okay. So in this case, we're going to create the infrastructure which composed of app insert keyword storage web app created all the time. So every time you deploy, it does the same exact thing. It's a dev or prod or stage. It's going to create the same exact thing. Go back to here. And then here there is a lock level. You can say read only or none. I would say none for now. But if you say read only, you can only read. Nobody can delete it. Okay, so anybody can read it. So lock level none is somebody can go and delete it because that's what I want to do. You can also add authorization. Who can see this catalog? You don't want everybody to see it. You want certain people to see it. For the dev, only certain people you want to see it. For the prod, only certain people you want to see it. So you can control that way. Okay. So I add authorization if you want to, but I'm going to skip all those things. They're pretty simple. You just go ahead, select a user, and go back to it. Oh God, I lost that value. Demo 1. Boston demo 1. Just choose this one. Location, put the package URL. This, I can say that deployment mode, complete or incremental. I always keep incremental. I'm going to say none, and then I create it. In a few seconds, this will create the template. Okay, created it. Either I can refresh it here, I know. And then sometimes there is this refresh won't work. You have to hard refresh, but going from here works 99% of the time, 100% of the time. Okay, so I have the thing. I can look at it. I can set some access control if I want to. I can do all those things, right? But now I'm going to deploy it over here. So it deploy from the definition, right? So I deployed over here. Now that's a UI that you are just validating, right? So that coming from that create definition markup file. So whatever is here, now we put a, I don't think I deep dive into this one. So we put a basic, that's the basic over here, like a basic. And we don't have a side step, next step, but I'll show some other demo later. The basic, we have the web names, queue, and all those things, right? And then we have the output. So these are the outputs. So location, web name, web SKU, package URL, storage account is passed back to main template. What does that mean? You must define all the outputs that referenced in the main template. If you're not defining, it's going to throw error. So you will not be defining if you have the default value. Say, for example, I have the storage account default value, then I don't need to define these output values. Otherwise, you must provide this output value, and then it validates that. Okay, now the main template, I know it's going to read all the value from this UI and then pass on to the main template. And main template takes that as a parameter, and then it goes through it. For the demo purpose, I create the web app insight name. I just prefix the app insight as a APPI dash whatever the web name that I provide, right? And then I run through it. So here is the one thing that I want to highlight. This does nothing, but I have it here. Why? For internal marketplace, it's not going to make any sense. Once you go public, which is an external marketplace, you need to keep this value in this format, GUID, any GUID, then Microsoft will track and pay you money. Okay, so it will pay you money, meaning that your template has been consumed. We are happy we generated the revenue, and hence you get some incentives. If you make $100,000 per year through your templates, then you get a lot more benefits on that. You can co-sell with them. Okay, your template is awesome. You made $100,000 a year. Now let's do a co-sell. You submit all the marketing material. They will work with you. Any deals come, they will understand your business, and they know where you fulfill their demand, and they will route all the leads to you in that area. Okay. That's the reason you have to keep this. If you don't have that requirement, you don't need to keep this at all. Again, it's nothing but empty resource. And this is the one way that Microsoft tracks. This is coming from the public marketplace. They validate the name's equal to BAD dash GUID. As soon as it comes in, they will track it on their system. Okay, this is coming from this is eligible for incentives, and so on, right? For our demo, I put a dummy name, but in a real world demo, you will be putting a PAD dash some unique QID. And if you go through, there is a lot more process. I will walk through in a few minutes. Let's go ahead and complete this one here. So I'm going to pick a East to US 2. That's my favorite region. I don't know why I'm doing that, but that's how I do. Udai, Boston 1. I'm going to copy these values. Okay, I'll keep it a little simple here. P1S1. I'll come back to the package URL storage account. If I go again, it will be a validation issue. I'm going to say ST. I follow some convention like this. KV. If we create a name, we just add a KV, ST, and so on. Standard. This is nothing but I just can put anything I want. Now I said if I have the package URL, I said it's going to deploy it. You can, in real world scenario, you will have the web package, but this is just a demo. So I'm going to use this URL over here. It's also a zip file, right? So it's going to extract and put some information. All right. So now I review. All right. No validation, and I'm going to create it. It's submitting. It's creating. If you don't want to wait, and you can go back to the resource group, open a new tab. Then you can keep watching how it's deploying. So it's deploying it over here. Okay, so it's going to take a couple of minutes. Let's not waste our time. Move on, and we'll come back to it. All right. So now you learned how the internal marketplace works, right? You did it. Now let's talk about the marketplace itself. Same exact concept. You organize the stuff, create a UI definition, main template, and then the artifacts. You create an template. You test that UI. You happy with it? You create a zip and you do it. The same. You already done all the steps, but now it's not easy to test by everybody. The corporate needs to have an account with the Microsoft. It's called a partner account. You need to create a partner account. Once you have the partner account, then you will go to the portal. Unfortunately, I can show those UI, but otherwise I will share it. You go to the partner account. I might have some screen saved to save. Okay, so here is the partner account. You can look at it, and then you select the offer. It can be a software as a service. It can be Azure application, which is nothing but solution template, Azure virtual machines, Azure container or consulting services. If you are great in consulting, you can submit, what kind of specialized to your area or the dynamics or IoT and so on. Software as a service, you just leave an endpoint. You connecting back to your system. As the user clicks, it collects the user's details and then submitting to you. Azure application is nothing but a solution template. It's an ARM template, nothing but an ARM template. Azure virtual machine is a VHD. You directly submit a VHD. But I would recommend, if you have to submit an Azure virtual machine, don't ever do that. You submit an Azure virtual machine as a VHD, as a hidden offer, and then you create an Azure application that leverages the hidden offer. Okay, so that way you can see how Microsoft tracking your usages. Some reason you have a lot of consumption on your VM, you also get paid for it. And then container and so on. I never used all those, but I used the top 3. Right? Once you have it, now how you submit it, you create a new offer, one of this offer. As you create the next step, it will walk you through offer setup, properties, offer listing, preview audience, technical configuration. That's where you're going to upload the zip file you just created. In other words, that you uploaded over here. Okay, it's failed. We will look at it. Created the file over there. There is that one. Okay. Co-sell with the Microsoft. It's not eligible until you meet $100,000 per year revenue generated by resell through CSPs, cloud solution providers, and you submit these ads, go through it. Okay, so you finish it. It takes a certain amount of time. From 3 ticks, publisher sign off, it may go 2 days, and then it will take like 7 to 10 days. If there is a failure, then you will have to start over and work with those teams to understand what it's failed. They will send you a link to their GitHub. You go through it, fix it, deploy it, fix it, deploy it until you and Microsoft agreed together. Sometimes you think the best practice is not defined by Microsoft team. I've seen it several times. For example, I define my variable, a version as a variable, because every resource has a different versions. So I want to replace it in one place, but Microsoft says that's not a best practice, but they're looking for a constant over there. Similarly, if you look at this template over here, template over here in the output main template. Let's go back to artifacts over here. I see that this output is okay. Let me look at the storage. Storage, yeah. This output is not okay. This will not pass. Also, you have the passing template. This will not pass because you can do a concat over here, but that concat should be done on the variable. And then you can call something like API versions of 0. Now you're going through a collections. They don't allow you. So you need to hard code the version number. So something to know. But once you are in that mode, you will get it. Then you work with them. Sometimes it's too much of problem from their side. They will ask you to do some JSON comment here to override. That may get you past the validation, but 2 months now you change it, that go through a different person, they might not pass the validation. So I would recommend you record it, all those conversations, so they listen to you very well. Anyway, let's fix this one. What is the problem over here? So that's how the marketplace works. Let me see what is the next topic. New offer, we looked at it. Okay, next one is template spec. We'll come back to it. So you can look at it. What is the problem? Click on it. Okay, so it says forbidden. Authorization failed. Okay. Okay, so I look like there is some authorization issues. I understand fully over here. There's not an authorization to perform the action. Components start right over the scope. Boston template inside. Some reference template is here. I need to choose a different one here. Service catalog. Yeah, the same thing deployed last night was working. Deploy. Name. Do you want me to deploy it? We'll come back. I'll show you how to deploy this one, but trust me, it'll work. But I have no idea why that's not working, but I can go back and look at it. We'll run if we have time towards the end. All right, let's get back to the template spec. Template spec is, again, you create a resource the same exact way, but minus the create a UI definition, and the main template. You don't need it. All you need is the Azure deploy. Again, as I said, Azure deploy is nothing but a main template. Okay, it's copy of the file, but they need the particular naming conventions. So you have that. The only key difference between that and then the template spec is template spec use the relative path. Okay, you don't need to create a zip file or something. As soon as you specify the relative path, it will take it. So again, ARM template structure, it supports the same exact syntax that we gone through, but it has something called a relative path. Support the template spec as a linked template. You can create a template spec using the PowerShell, and you can also have a template spec for another template spec. So just like how I set a certified CI/CD controls, you can have a template spec for app 1, template spec for app 2, template spec for app 3, and you can refer those them into app 4 and so on. Okay, so here's some syntax how you run the template spec, and then the if you want to refer it as ID, you read the template spec name and then pass in the template spec ID. That's how you refer it. Again, if you visit this link, it gives you all the details. Let's run the quick demo. So to run the template spec, I go back to a deploy.json. I call this one. I'm going to put a template spec. Again, I created the copy of the file. I call it as the template spec.json. Template spec.json. I copy that one. Name. Good. That name can be anything. Okay, so template spec, it's in the RG Udai template. Go back over here. We'll come back to that one, why that's failed. I go back to the resource group. Udai Boston. You have to refresh a few times to appear the template spec. So here's the template spec. So here is the service catalog that we deployed. Okay, so we deployed the service catalog, and then that comes over here. And then once you click on it, open a new tab. This creates another okay, so it didn't go through it, but if you click on the resource group, so that's a hidden resource group, and then it'll create all the resources. But if you look at the log, it failed on the app insight, and hence it's failed everything. So you first create the storage and then create an app insight. There was some error in the app insight that failed, and then then everything else is failed. So you have two options. You can resubmit this offer, right? Not this offer, the redeployment. So you can go back to service catalog. open a new tab. Open a new tab. Click on the Boston demo one, and then deploy it. Okay, so you can redeploy it by using that one, and this time this may work, but I think I might have given a wrong name, I guess. So before we continue, let's do one more time. Highly likely possible I gave a wrong name. ST AV dash 2. This puts the resource managed resource group name, but this URL I'm going to go back. Copy this one. Let's do a new resource group over here. RG Udai Boston 2. Just in case. Okay, there looks good. Maybe the name is pretty big. I don't check what is the size I gave it, but I would assume that may be highly possible. All right, let's do this way. Sometimes we restrict the name size. Okay, so that should be good. Let's review and create. All right, create. Let it go. So let's go back and look at the template spec. So here is the template spec. When I click on the template spec, it includes artifact. So I go back and look at my template spec definitions. So I have the parameters. Nothing different than what you did on the deploy.json. As I said, it's a copy of that file. I have the parameters, I have the variable, I have the resource. Then again, you don't need this resource if you don't use a marketplace. Okay. And then storage and app insight, and so on. I created it, and then I have the output parameters. But in this, when I refer this, I have a depend on storage, app, and app insight. But if you look at it, I say relative path. I only run this file, right? In the syntax, I only run that particular file, template spec. But how it knows to bring all the other files under the artifact, because we are saying that relative path is equal to artifact / keyword, relative path is equal to artifact / web app, and so on. Artifact / relative path, artifact / app insight, relative path, artifact / storage. So it parses the file and collect all the files, referenced files, and then put them in over here. Okay, and then it calls nice version 1. That's what we gave it. But now if I go to run this one, I can call it as replace it if I do as it is, or I can say version number 2. Okay, so now I modify a little bit over there. So file save, I can run that version number 2. Okay, so no problem. So if you refresh few seconds later, we will have a version number 2 as the latest. Okay, so 2 as the latest. Now, how do I deploy what version I want? Either you go back to the versions and then you pick the version that you want to deploy, 1.0 or 2.0, it doesn't matter. So in this case, I'm going to deploy 2.0. It says main template, and then click on the deploy options. Again, not different than what we deployed before. You complete the parameters. I would leave it location. Let's create a new RG dash Udai dash Boston 3. Let's go back. APB dash Boston 3. Web, that's maybe a problem. So web-based, we didn't put a drop down. So we're going to say P1 V1 hard coded. This is why you have to imply the drop down place. When you did internal marketplace, we had a drop down, so you select it. But here you put a text box. They are not going to worry about it. They only worry about if they have out of the box control. Then they won't let you do it. ST KV standard, and then here you don't see all those things. Again, this UI is not something you create the UI. This UI parses the JSON file, right? The format, the parameters that you defined over here, based on that parameters, this UI is created. Okay, so that's the cool thing about template spec. If you only want to use it within the subscription, this is the right way to do it. Just go ahead and create your template spec, one or more template spec. You nest them as a template or a template spec, and then you use it. Review and create. Now create. You got it. So that's going to go. That's how it is. You can deploy multiple versions. If you deploy multiple versions, select the version and deploy it. Now, the next concept, any questions so far? Okay, the next question that we're going to have is the blueprints. There's not a lot of difference between blueprints and template spec. They both are complement each other. And in my definition, they both looks a little bit of duplicate, but the one let you define under the management groups. So if you have like hundreds of subscriptions, and you can define a management group to categorize them, and then you can apply which management group can see it, and then the corresponding subscription can apply to it, right? That's only a huge difference that I see in it. It also let you define the policies and then the RBAC. I think you can do it in a template spec. I never tried it, but that's the other difference that you can think of it. It let you sequencing by using the different sound. That depends on dynamic and static parameter, publishing support, and everything. But again, blueprint is only runs within the subscription. It has nothing to do with the marketplace. But again, if you look at all these demo, you had a one basic thing called Azure Deploy, right? And I call it as all-in-one because parameter file. That's the one thing. Now we're using a multiple variations of how you can leverage that Azure Deploy. We leveraged the CI/CD, we leveraged internal marketplace, we leveraged external marketplace, we leveraged template spec. Now we're going to leverage it in the market in the blueprints. There is a slightly difference when you compare the template spec and blueprints. That's the reason I like the blueprints, but now I need to localize like this. You can write a little programming to dynamically do that. So watch this. Here is this default format structure. So you have to have blueprint.json, and then you put your artifacts. Okay. In that artifacts, you define the parameters. Blueprint.json has the predefined structure. It's not a lot different than what you've seen so far. Parameters. Yeah, I understand. And then you define that variable called anything. It can be anything. You name it. I call it as my Boston. That's okay. But that's the same exact value should be used over here. Okay. So if you put a my Boston here, it should be a my Boston here. If you put a my user group, it should be a my user group. That should be named, matched. Okay. And then you set the target scope. So here you have the target scope functionality. It can be a subscription level, or it can be a management group level. If you're new to management group let you sleekly organize your one or more subscription categorize one or more subscription in a multiple hierarchical way. That's a different term. And then it uses a type called blueprints type. Okay, so that's the blueprint.json. The parameter file, nothing different than what we see in the parameters. But in the artifact, this is the one reason I don't like the blueprint, because I can't use the template I defined for the template spec. I can't use the template I defined for the marketplace. Now I have to localize slightly different. So the difference is, you see that section called template, that's nothing but this template. Okay, you copy content of these and put them over there. Sorry, put them over there. I know. Minus the parameters. The parameters you can define it after that. Minus the parameters, you put the content of your artifact gets in over there. Kind of template, all your artifacts gets in over there, and so on. So you can create an artifact called storage.json, and if you have a typical ARM template, copy the content of it, put it over here. It will become a blueprint template, blueprint artifact. If you have web.json, copy the web.json, replace the template section, that will become a blueprint web.json, and so on, right? That's the only difference over here. No, that's my note, don't worry about it. There is some syntax how you can execute it. I don't want to waste the time. Jason, Bill, how are you looking on the time?
Doing fine.
Okay. I'm fine for next 10 minutes.
Yep.
Oh.
Yeah. They're not going to kick us out of the room, so we're good.
Okay. Okay. All right. So when you go back over here, now I'm going back to the deploy.json. I should be having some syntax. No. Okay. I'll copy from here. Right. You will have to import these modules, AZ Blueprint. If you don't have it, I'm running this for months, so I think I should be having something. I'm just going to copy this syntax directly and then put them over here. All right, my blueprints say Boston 2, template path, management group ID. I can give a subscription ID or management group ID, it doesn't matter. So this is how I create it. So first thing I need to go back to the folder where my hold on, I didn't explain how that works. So let me go back to the portal here. It's also failed the web app. We'll come back and look at it. That one. So if I look at it, Azure governance, right? So I have the blueprints over here. Okay. I have the artifact. Oh, I have the files over there. Did I open it from here? Okay, blueprints. So that's the syntax. I collect all the parameters that I wanted. Okay. Then I call it as a demo. And I go back to, and then you can have some RBAC. You can put them in the RBAC rules in the assign.json. It will take it. And then here is the artifact. So I go back to how it's linked the artifact. It's a convention based. Again, you don't need to worry about it. Any folder under the artifact is automatically executed. You don't need to refer them anywhere. Okay. So in this case, you execute the blueprint.json, it opens the artifact, it's going to execute it. But what order it needs to execute, that's what you're going to control it by using the depends on. Okay. So it has the parameter passed in, whatever the parameter collected there, it automatically passed in. But if you need to map it on the bottom. Okay. So this is how you map. And then you say depend on storage. So if you want to depend on multiple, and you just keyword depend on storage, web app depends on something else, storage and search. Okay, so you define that. And then if you want output, you can output it. You can read the output from the other template by just saying that. How do you read it? Give an example over here. Okay, artifact of storage, and then whatever the output variables, and then the name of the variable. That they slightly make a different syntax here. This is not going to follow the other default ARM template syntax. That's the only thing I little annoying. Otherwise, it looks nice. It's well organized. Naming convention based. It all works great, and you control how to execute an artifact by adding that depends on. Now, how you read it, you go to the artifact name outputs, and then whatever the name you put it over here. Here, if you look at the storage artifact is it outputs the name called storage connection string. So you go back to the web app, and that's how it reads. Where I was reading, and I was reading, maybe output storage connection string. That's how it reads. Okay. To run this template, so here it's some syntax. You run it input path, and then you need to specify the subscription or the management group ID, and then you read the blueprint, and then you publish. Again, just like a template spec, you have to specify the version number. You can, if you put a same version number, deploy again, it will replace it, or you can keep doing the versioning. They provide you a versioning. You don't need to make it in your DevOps. That's how the blueprint works. Okay, let's go back to the template script. We have some time shortage, but I have some other demo. I can record a demo. I can show it. Template script. Now you have all the ARM template. It does everything, which is nice and great. But what if you want to create some sort of AD application to enable authentication? There is no ARM template does that. No ARM template today can do that. There's no way it can do that. So you need to use some sort of PowerShell script and load the AD commands and then provide all those options, right? So that's why the script comes into. They allow you to script a PowerShell or CLI, but one or other, but not both at the same time. Okay, so you can create. But the way that you run those things by you creating the user assigned managed identity. You go back, you create a user assigned managed identity and give them the access control. In most cases, then if you create the create any services, then you need a contributor rights. You want to write a data, then you need a data contributor. You only want to allow read it, you need a reader. So you make sure you have enough access provided to the service identity, and then you use them as a script. Let's go back and look at it, how that looks. So I have the last one called template script. So create a user identity. So you go back to the resource group. Let's go back to the resource group, Boston, add, user. What is the name? User assigned managed identity. Forget that name, please. I don't use more. Oh God, I don't like this blade. So and then you create it. You name it. Used to use two. And call it as the, user assigned the manage identity to. Okay, and then review and create, and then you need to grant them access. Create it. It quickly creates because it's just a name, like a logical variable, just like any other variables. You go back to a resource group. It is there, but you can, if you want to, you can give any access control you want. So, for example, I want to give a access control of that IAM. I will look for the name, which add role assignment. I provide this name. It's going to find that name, and then I give a contributor. Okay, good to go. And I done that. Now I should be able to my PowerShell script inside my ARM template, or my ARM templates, right? So to do that, let's run this one as a template spec. Okay, we don't have any relative path here, right? And again, this is for demo only. I need to copy a subscription ID. Give me a second. Copy it. You in real world scenario, you will be parameterizing that, but for demo, it's okay. User. User access managed identity. Did I say 2? I think so. Source group. Yeah, UAMI2. So UAMI2, and then there is a container settings storage account. So when you run, you probably know when you run a CLI or PowerShell, you will have to create a storage account. It's a temporary space. It uses it. If you don't provide, it's going to create it. If you do provide, then it uses that account. If you do provide, it should make sure the keys and everything is working. Otherwise, throw the error, right? So we did that. We put a subscription, managed identity, UMI2. We set it at. We run the PowerShell. Again, we are not doing rocket science over here. We're just passing the parameter called v1. We're looking for that output be there. And then there is some parameter when to timeout 30 minutes, 1 day retention interval, that succeed events. And then here we set deployment script output. Okay, empty object. In that empty object, we set a property called text, and then whatever the value that output, which is the v1 over here. I'm going to run this as a template spec, so it's easy to verify it. So might deploy to call it as 1, but it doesn't matter. You name the version. It doesn't matter what version it is, location, and then template script JSON template script. Template script.json. Yeah, I think this could be one of the things I might have broken. I edit it and then it's not saving it. Okay, let's do a quick scan. Seems to be fine. I don't see anything. Okay, it is a one problem. What is the name I used? Template script. File save all. Okay, template script. Let it create. We'll go back and review this one. Finally, best practices. Ensure that your JSON is properly formatted and the UTF-8. The Git stores is a UTF-16. If you don't pay attention, UTF-16 stored in anywhere is fine except in Git. Use variable values that are multiple times throughout the template or complex expressions. If you have a concat, don't do it on part of the parameters, do it part of the variable. Use the latest API version. The Microsoft recommendation not older than 2 years. Would even go 1 year, but if you look at that, they have a lot of resources. It's hard to stick to 2 years. Some may go back to 5 years old too. I mean, by documentation, they say that in practicality, it's not possible to live with 2 years. But they don't even consider, but they will say that anyway, assuming that someday they will replace. They're thinking that they're replacing. Remove unused variables and parameters. So, if you have a variable never used in the template, remove it. Keep it clean, minimized. We use a default value, but not set the empty string. That was one example we saw. The default value is good to have it, but don't set as a empty. It doesn't make sense. Always set default value for the location to this. That was a recommendation coming from Microsoft, and I kind of like that recommendation. All empty. I mean, you don't need to set it on the sub template, but you do have to set it on the main template. All empty or null properties that are not required must be excluded. So if you look at the template, we set a lot of places null or array, right? Empty arrays, right? So you want to say allowed IP, you will put an empty array by default. Well, you don't need to, just remove that. If there is an empty array, empty default value null, remove all those lines. And some reason you want to go marketplace, they're going to reject it. That's one of the validation. The problem is you are not interactively working with them. It takes like 7 to 10 days to get back to the result. You waste technically 7 to 10 days unless you are a billion-dollar company where you can get dedicated people directly work for you. In my case, I have to wait 7 days. Do not use allowed values for listings like meant to be inclusive. For example, VM sizes. Wherever they have the control defined, you use that. Otherwise, it's okay to bring down your allowed values. All parameters should have a description. I like that. That helps other developer to look at it, what the previous developer did, or what's the intention of the parameter. Do not output keys when you use to the marketplace. Sensitive information is kept to be secret. Don't display it. If at all you have to do it, use a key vault. Key vault keys, secret certificate, whatever way you want to use it. That's the best thing that you should follow it. Let's go back and then see what it does. Might apply to, we call it as, right? So we here somewhere, might apply to. Yeah, I got a version 1. I create a deploy. No, it shouldn't be doing that. Okay, let's go back. It didn't have any artifacts because we didn't relate any templates, right? So deploy it. I didn't have any input either. There is no parameter defined. It just trying to do some demo thing. So just create it. It's going to create that one. It may take some time, but when it's ready, we can look at it. So let's go back and look at how many things failed, why it's failed. Yeah, so that's over here, Boston 2. That's the one. Demo Boston. I didn't even deploy it. Okay. Refresh. All right, any question? I think that's the last part of the talk, but I covered everything, and some demo failed that maybe I would have typed some keys. If you really want to do what one of the enterprise that we have here, portal.azure.com, I'll quickly walk you through that. It's a final topic. Go to Akumina. We have a lot of offerings, so this is the biggest offer than the other offers. So you look at it. I have the cognitive search, cache redis type, Cosmos DB, log analytics, workspace name, and then I ask the deployment package. So where is the package? This is where I control the intellectual property. You can go and buy it, but without you giving me, you are talking to me, it's not going to, you are not taking my intellectual property. So I control it. It will complete the creation, but you are now paying money to Microsoft. Microsoft knows because of the tag I added over there, right? Like empty resource, the PID. Microsoft knows they're using my offers, and they will start sending me the statistics, how he's using, who is using, all those things, and then I can follow it. They also give a free marketplace URLs if you go to a marketplace. I'm just going to bring this page over here. Fire up the question if you have anything, please, while you're waiting for me.
So Udai, so thank you, Udai, and thank you everybody who joined us. As Veronica mentioned in the Slack, in the team's chat, it's okay to unmute yourself, and you can ask a question of Udai directly, or you can type it in, and one of us will read it, or Udai can just read it himself, I guess, at this point, since he's not presenting. Udai, I had a quick question that maybe you could speak to. Is if you're familiar with it, there's this other critter coming out of Microsoft that is a little higher level abstraction above ARM called, I called it Bison earlier, but Bicep. And I'm wondering if you've yeah,
can you spell it for me? Can you spell it?
Oh, okay. So BICEP. It's a pun on arm, is like a human arm, and the bicep is the muscle, one of the muscles in the arm. Yeah. Okay. So if you're asking that, you probably aren't actively using it. It's I think it's like a project out on GitHub, and it's not really part of the platform, as I understand it. It's more a, you know, it's a kind of like the entity library, whatever that was, entlib, enterprise library.
Okay.
It's a, you know, one of those, you know, slightly differently delivered solutions. So that's cool. So maybe we're going to talk on that in the future, but this is an active project. If you're not familiar with it, Udai, you may want to check it out. And clearly you seem
sure.
Plugged into almost everything else. So
yeah, except the this. So now I need to change my statement, not A to Z, A to Y, not to 0 to 100, 0 to 90.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. Okay. Yeah, I was going to ask if you had any comments on that, but it sounds like that'd be a future discussion with you. So if you want to look at the comments in Teams, Udai, you can read them directly, or I can read you out. Read any that come in here. Looks like Andrew mentioning the cloud adoption framework.
Yeah, you can. Yeah, you can do that. Yes. Okay. Thank you for the credit to Srikanth. That's not a question. That was a credit to me. You can do the CAF. Yes, very well. You can do it. What's the other question? Okay, we will definitely do that. Any other question, guys? I don't see questions. Okay, so right, Mark, I believe Bison units on template the hood, but provide a higher level syntax. Yeah, I'm new to Bicep, so I think Bill is my master right now.
A poor one there. Another question that maybe you could weigh in on, Udai, is back in the beginning of time when ARM first became a thing. It was, I think, I don't remember the timing with great precision, but I would bet a little money that ARM came out before the CLI, or before the CLI was mature, and ARM was the only way to do like idempotent and goal state kinds of deployments, right? You could say what you wanted, and the platform would figure it out. So it was more obviously the tool, if that was your goal. It was before there was mature CI/CD and so forth as well, so it's going way back. But since then, CLI, my understanding of CLI is that it's also a pretty good tool for accomplishing the goal that you stated up front. Is you want a predictable, you're an enterprise, and you're not going to do it just once. You want to be able to repeatedly do it. And you know, one way of accomplishing that is with ARM. I'm curious if you have any comments about ARM, using ARM for that. Obviously, you like ARM. I'm wondering if you have any comments on that, about using something like CLI for the same end goal of having a predictable deployment experience.
I would define everything as an ARM, and then I use CLI to execute it based on where I am. There is always room to use CLI or PowerShell, but ARM is the one controls everything. I will not use, for example, create a storage as a CLI. I will define create storage as ARM and then call execute the resource template from the CLI. Even you use that directly from the CLI, create a storage account internally, it's going to translate that into an ARM template and then transfer that payload into a REST endpoint. Now over the time, the CLIs get changed, but ARM template follows a very simple syntax, human readable. Anybody can change it. It's easy to maintain. Say, my vote always goes to ARM template. You maintain everything in ARM template, and then you use the CLI as your orchestrator, put it that way. Or a service catalog as your orchestrator, or marketplace as your orchestrator, or CI/CD as your orchestrator, or Git Action as your orchestrator, or template spec as your orchestrator. You define it, or maybe the PySep, which I didn't go through it yet, but yeah, could be your another orchestrator. I would define everything as ARM template.
Good answer. If you want to play with the orchestrators, you need something that's orchestratable. So thanks for that, Udai.
Yeah.
And back to the audience, are there any lots of kudos? It looks like there aren't any further questions. If anybody has any final questions, please unmute and ask it now. Otherwise, we'll go into, do we have any announcements, Veronica or Jason or anybody from the audience?
I have this meeting. If anybody wanted to join, it's again my practical experience how I build a cloud across the regions. If you want to join, but I may be repeating in Boston if Plus and Jason plus me someday. I don't know.
Oh, very cool, very cool.
All right. Thank you for staying late. That's I know I took 20 minutes over or 10 minutes over at least. Thank you for staying late, and thank you, Bill, Veronica, Jason, for the opportunity.
Thanks, everybody. Stay safe out there. We'll keep an eye on Boston Azure or virtual Boston Azure announcements. Our next scheduled meeting is the 14th. Daniel Colon on ARC, as mentioned. And but keep an eye on things in case we announce a talk before then. Till then, thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Thanks again, Udai. Excellent talk.
Talk to you guys soon.
Always learn something.